What's the smallest decision you made that had the biggest impact on your life? From 6th to 12th grade, or age 11 to 18 for those not from the USA, I had a school bus ride home that lasted about an hour. It sucked, and I spent the morning going and doing homework, and the afternoon home reading. One day, when I was in 8th grade, I ran through the library and panicked. Class is out and I have just a few minutes to pick out a book, else I'll be bored for an hour mode, and happened to choose one on astronomy. Still remember it exactly. It was called From the Big Bang to Planet X by Terence Dickinson, and had the Andromeda Galaxy on the cover, a galaxy I've had an affinity for since now that I think about it. Anyway, by the end of that school bus ride, I was already thinking about what kind of telescope I wanted to buy, and realizing with a shock that any 13-year-old could technically grow up to be an astronomer, even if they lived in Pittsburgh. And I wanted to be an astronomer ever since, and I am one now. All because of that one book I happened to grab for my school bus ride home. In 5th grade, I apologized to the new kid for the other kids in class being mean to him. We're 28 now, and have been best friends for more than half our lives. Couldn't be happier I talked to him. When I was in 2nd grade, I moved to a new school, and the teacher said, "Does anyone want to be friends with the new kid?" And this kid raised his hand, and we've been friends for 11 years. I worked as a personal assistant to a wheelchair-bound guy with cerebral palsy. One Wednesday, he wanted to go out, but had no idea what to do. A friend of mine had mentioned he was going to a stand-up comedy show that night, a rarity in Sweden in 1989. I suggested this as a possible outing, and he couldn't think of anything better, so we went. Long story short, they had an open mic, and I tried out, ended up doing stand-up comedy professionally for nearly a decade. Wheelchair. Stand up. See, anyone can do it. I used to mow the lawn and do some other yard work for my elderly neighbor, who lived alone. My parents said it was my Islamic duty. She tried to pay me, but my parents made me refuse. After she passed, she left her house to me. I'm usually shy, but I was half drunk the morning after a party. My buddy was having a bad weekend, so I decided I would walk up to a hot girl and hit on her, in public, so that he could enjoy my hilarious, inevitable rejection. I am nothing to look at, was next day drunk off Jaeger, and undoubtedly reeked like cigarettes. It was slam dunk rejection material. We're married and have a house and a kid now. I was leaving traffic court one day, and at the time I was looking for a full-time job. I was 20. I passed by this bank that I never even heard of, and decided to look them up. Turns out they were a small local bank around me. I applied. Half an hour later I got a call to have an interview, and then once I got the interview, I got the job. 4 years later, I'm an assistant manager, and I have been able to move out, support myself completely, and I am working on school. Accidentally finding what I wanted to do because I was curious about a place I passed by one day was the best thing that happened to me, and I really love what I do. I applied for a job that I really wanted, that I was way underqualified for, and in a field I didn't work in, because why not? And surprisingly I was sent a rejection email, so out of politeness, I replied with a thank you, and some questions on what they think I should work on if there were another opening in the future. I got a detailed response. The person who responded to me would periodically check in with me and see how I was doing on those goals. A year and a lot of hard work later, I'm working in the best job I've ever had in an amazing field. My statistics class was moved from one classroom to another, and we were told to pick any seat. I was already seated, but saw a girl I liked sitting on the other side of the room, and there was an empty spot behind her. Went over and took it, chatted with her. We've been together 24 years, married with 3 kids. I had nothing to do one day, and my girlfriend at the time was going to a meeting at a college with an advisor about their nursing program, so naturally I went along just out of boredom. Well, here we are 5 years later, and I've been in RN for over a year now. I miss my international flight back home, because I was hungover and just didn't feel like going to the airport. Instead, I went to grab a coffee with a guy I met a couple of days earlier. 5 years later, We are now married, living in a foreign country, expecting our first child together. You should ask him out soon. But you can't be sure she's into him though. Getting that bulge in my neck checked out. Guess what? Yeah, leukemia. Check your body for bumps and bulges, and whatnot, everyone. I wasn't planning on going to college for money reasons, so I sadly watched the application deadline for my dream school come and go. I woke up the morning of my 18th birthday to an email that said the school extended the deadline. Applied, got in, and I'm so glad I did. Something similar happened to me. The last day before the deadline, I gave up, cause I couldn't afford the app fee, but a few hours later I called up every relative I knew. My step-grandpa gave me the money, and now I'm a sophomore at my dream school with an almost full-ride scholarship. Needing the extra credit, I signed up for a class in programming on my last year of high school. I figured it would at least be a fun distraction between the important classes. 5 years professional software developer now. It seemed small at the time, when I sought help for alcohol abuse in the Air Force's drug and alcohol program. At first the program was structured so that I would have been out in 6 to 12 weeks without really learning anything. Then a captain took over the program and changed it from time-based to goal-based, so we had to come up with some goals that we could meet and get ourselves out of the program. I finished my associates that I had been putting off for 4 years, aced the physical fitness test twice, won awards at the group level, and numbered Air Force and really set myself up for success when I separated. I also started hiking and summited around 50 mountains in the last 3 years. I decided one evening to stop by my parents' house before going home. Turns out my mom had been having a series of strokes all evening, and my father and sister didn't recognize the signs. She's okay now. A little worse for wear. Some aphasia and balance issues, but mama wouldn't look at me or talk to me properly. She has permanent leg and back damage, so she's lying in bed facing away. I say, hey ma, what's the deal? You feeling okay? And she proceeded to describe a coughing fit she'd had about 6 hours ago. Followed by the inability to talk, to enunciate, and then that she couldn't write. She showed me papers of her indecipherable scribblings. I held her face in my hands and I said, smile for me mama, smile. She has a dog bite injury, lower right jaw, makes her mouth droop. Yet, it wasn't weak. It wasn't drooped. However, it was off. So I asked her to write for me. And it was legible. But off. Ma has gorgeous writing. Grew up with penmanship classes and all that. Yet it was off, not flowing. Hesitations. So I held her face again. And I said, mama, this sounds like a stroke. Smile. Smile real hard and squeeze my arms as hard as you can. It wasn't right. I knew. So I said, we're going to the hospital. Thus began an argument to end all arguments, because daddy and sissy had seen the handwriting and didn't weird out. They had known that for the last few hours sometimes she could talk, and sometimes she couldn't. I don't give a duck. I ended up throwing a tantrum. The old-fashioned toddler kind. At 25 years old, I stomped, screamed, and slammed my fists into my thighs while sobbing that this was a stroke, and while an EMT couldn't force her into the ambulance, I was gonna fireman kidnap carry her into the car. Imagine father and sister fluttering in the background with weakening protests while I lose my mind. In the end, everyone relented, and the baby of the family won the day. Ma had a 6-hour surgery the following day. The catheter, stent type surgery wasn't possible. They tried and failed. The but at the end of the post is that strokes aren't well understood, or they could be understood better. And mama has had several more strokes since then. She still can't walk well, though these days it might be at all. But that was before the strokes. Other health issues. Daddy has passed away. The balance, dizzy, numbness and lack of strength issues that occur with strokes are a battle. It's something that I think about often. My family lived 3 blocks from my house at the time. I dropped by on whims often. It created a lot of problems for me. My eldest sister had died less than a year before, leukemia. I saved mama's, if not life, her quality of life. and I have a lot of anxiety about the whole thing. The bit encompassed a lot. The 17th of November, 1980, I was out riding my bicycle. At an intersection I decided to turn right as I had already ridden the road to the left. I turned right, and about 5 seconds later an oncoming car forced me off the road. I struck a telephone pole and was instantly paralyzed at the T4 level. That is truly life-altering. What has happened since then? Life in a wheelchair. A little more difficult since I'm 6 feet 7. I was married at the time. We just celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary. No kids, just cats. I earned my master's degree, a private pilot's license, owned a couple of different businesses. I ran a one-man web development company for 17 years, traveled full-time in an RV, rode a handcycle for over 1,000 miles, done stand-up comedy, and performed in an improv troupe, wrote 2 and published novels, and a bunch of other things. Hey, just because I'm paralyzed doesn't mean I'm lazy. When I was an undergrad, I asked this professor if they needed any help in lab. He gave me this small project, and that was all, but I just kept showing up and hanging out. Another professor took notice, and he started giving me work. Eventually they gave me my own desk, hired me, and really started my whole career. What really made this such a big deal though, was that I suffer from rather severe depression, and this job has helped me pay for health insurance, treatment, and given me a purpose that makes all the troubles of life not seem so bad. So yeah, just deciding to hang out there, whether working or not, made a huge difference in my life trajectory. Edit 1. Any help not an help. Also, to clarify, I'm an organic chemist. Just in response to a few of the comments. I picked one of the hundreds of servers in World of Warcraft Europe. Contacts I made through the guild I was in ended up landing me a great career in a totally different part of the country, and has completely shaped my life. Decided to go out to meet a friend instead of mope after my ex. Had an accident on my way there. Ended up back in my room and on meds. Another friend called to check up on me, and we ended up talking through the night. Haven't stopped talking to her in 3 years. Haven't stopped talking to her in 3 years. You should ask her out, man. Oh, I asked her to marry me. One more reason to ask her out. Opening an email from an old professor. It was mass sent and not very specific in its title, so I could have just as easily passed on it, but I opened it. It was a link to a scholarship program in America. I applied, won it, and was sent to the University of Pennsylvania for a year. I was only 20 and didn't have any ambitions to leave Bulgaria at all, but being abroad made me want to explore the world. 5 years later, I've lived in 4 different countries and visited most of Europe. I'm not anywhere near done. I've always been fascinated by the butterfly effect of what one thinks are the smallest actions. A few years ago, I randomly decided to call an old college friend to wish him a happy birthday, instead of just posting on Facebook. We got caught up on a lot of things, and he mentioned how he was dating a girl that he met on dating site. He wouldn't shut up about her. A few weeks later, I see an ad for dating sites, free weekend, so I decide to sign up, pretty quickly hit it off with a match, and we started dating. A few months later, she invites me out to meet her friends before they do a girls' night. I lie to one of my friends about why I'm going out, and convince him to come with me. He ends up chatting up a friend of my girl. This was all 4 years ago. This past weekend we got together, so our newborns could play together. At the doctor's. One more thing, doctor, when will I grow out of feeling this bad all the time? And that's when I found out I had depression and anxiety, and then started getting treated. At age 7, I decided I wanted to be a musician, and asked my parents for piano lessons. They thought I was way too young for something so serious, but I proved them wrong. That decision began a course of study that lasted beyond college, and shaped my life and career into what it has become today. I was a computer science major in college. I got really tired of it really fast, and was about to switch to a biology degree. As I was on my way to the dean's office to talk about transferring, it started raining, so I didn't go. The next day, the dean isn't there, so I say duck it, and go to the engineering dean's office instead. I'm now an engineer because it rained one day. One of my former friends talked to a girl who had a crush on him. He wasn't really interested and gave me her number so she could get distracted / off his back. I wasn't interested at first either and almost didn't write, but I gave it a go anyways. Things escalated and now we have been married for 8 years and have a 3-year-old. My friend tried hitting on her shortly afterwards once he realized how awesome she was / is. He didn't succeed. Quoting Dr. Evil in a job interview. When I sat down with the 2 guys interviewing me, I opened with this line, "Gentlemen, let's get down to business." Their eyes lit up and they were captivated. I ended up getting the job and later found out from them that they had their minds made up from early in the interview. I was having several interviews around this time and they were all the same. Same questions, same type of job, all government jobs. I was saying the exact same thing every time and not getting any job offers. The only difference this time was that opening line. 2 years later, and I'm still working here, got my contract renewed about 6 times, and they are working on hiring me permanently once I graduate this spring.